When a relationship ends, especially when she's the one who walks away, the first thing that hits isn't sadness, it's not even guilt, it's justification, because she has to believe she made the right decision, not because she's cold, but because facing the truth that she might have lost something real is too painful too soon. So she builds a story, she gathers all your mistakes like evidence in a courtroom, the times you didn't show up, the words you didn't say, and even if those moments were small, they become huge in her mind, not because they define the truth, but because they protect her from the regret she's not ready to feel. You see, she doesn't sit down and say, I miss him, even if she does. Instead, she tells herself she's growing. That leaving was strength, that losing you was actually finding herself. But the truth, that doesn't stay buried for long, because silence, your silence, has a strange way of bringing everything back, louder, clearer, unfiltered, and that's where everything begins to change. Why she expected you to react differently when she walked away? There was a moment she expected something from you, not silence, not strength, but weakness. She thought you'd chase her, she thought you'd crumble, reach out, beg her to stay, flood her inbox with messages trying to fix what she just broke, because deep down that would have made it easier for her to believe she made the right decision. If you reacted with desperation, it would validate everything she told herself. He still needs me more than I ever needed him. What she didn't expect was your silence, and that silence, it scared her more than any argument, any apology, any fight ever could. You see, people often assume that the one who walks away has all the power, that she's the one in control. But that control is fragile. It's built on the expectation that you will react. Because if you cry, if you fight, if you plead, she gets to be the strong one, the one who left something broken behind and never looked back. But when you didn't chase her, it threw her into unfamiliar territory. She didn't expect your absence to be that loud. She was prepared for drama. She was prepared for tears. She was ready to feel like the one with the upper hand. What she wasn't prepared for was you letting go without resistance. Because that meant something far more powerful. It meant you valued yourself more than the approval of someone who walked away, and that shook her. At first, she may have smiled, posted stories, shared quotes about peace, healing, choosing herself, maybe even threw a few passive-aggressive lines out there that clearly had your name written all over them. But every post was a test. Every little poke was a question. Are you still watching me? Do I still have your attention? Did I still matter enough for you to break your silence? But nothing came. No reaction, no call. No, I miss you. And suddenly, the silence turned into something unbearable, not because she missed your words, but because she couldn't figure out if you had truly let go. See, when someone walks away, their ego whispers, they'll never get over me. But when you stay calm, truly calm, it disrupts that ego's voice. You didn't play games, you didn't post cryptic messages, you didn't pretend to be over to spark jealousy. You just disappeared, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And that is what she never prepared for. In her mind, she built a version of you after the breakup, the broken man, the one who can't move on, the one who's falling apart because she's gone. She believed she had that effect, but you didn't fit that role. Instead, you gave her nothing to react to. No outburst, no apology, no please come back, just stillness. And it forced her to sit with her own thoughts. That's where the doubt started. Why didn't he fight for Muz? I'm not important enough. Did he let go that easily? But those weren't really the questions. The real fear, the one buried beneath all the justifications, was this: what if I was wrong about him? Because if you didn't chase him, maybe you weren't as broken as she thought. Maybe you weren't the problem at all. Maybe, just maybe, she walked away from something solid, something rare, something real, and her ego can't sit quietly with that. So she starts building another story. One where you were emotionally unavailable, one where you never really loved her, one where you failed to give her what she needed. But here's the truth: if that were completely true, she wouldn't need to say it out loud. She wouldn't be trying to prove it to her friends or to herself. Because people who are truly over you, they're not still talking about you. They're not still watching your stories. They're not still wondering why you didn't come running back. She is. She's still paying attention closely. Every moment of silence is a mirror, forcing her to see not just who you were, but who she became when you stopped responding. And that's what she never saw coming. She expected control. She expected a reaction. She expected your world to fall apart just because she walked out of it. Instead, you rebuilt it silently, stronger, wiser. Now, while she pretends to be okay, there's a restlessness beneath the surface. Because the attention she's getting now, it doesn't feel like yours. The compliments are empty. The connections are surface level. The laughs aren't real. She's chasing distractions, not depth. Because what you gave her was something no one else has replaced yet: stability, understanding, presence. You knew her patterns. You saw the parts of her she tried to hide. You were there not for who she pretended to be, but for who she really was. And now that you're gone, she's realizing not everyone does that. Not everyone can. But by the time she starts to understand what she let go of, Your silence has already said everything she thought she'd never hear. I'm not waiting anymore. You didn't punish her with silence, you healed in it. You didn't use it as a weapon, you used it as protection from games, from chaos, from people who don't value consistency. And maybe one day she'll reach out, not because she suddenly remembered you, but because she never stopped. But here's the key, you don't owe her a reaction. Your peace is proof that you survived what she thought would break you. Because when she expected you to react differently, she underestimated something powerful. You grew. And in that growth, you found what she was never prepared for, a version of you who knows his worth. And that's something silence could say louder than words ever could. The shift in her thoughts begins at first. She felt confident in her decision. She told herself it was the right move. She walked away convinced that you didn't give enough, that you stopped trying, that she outgrew the relationship. In her mind, she had to believe that because the alternative was too painful. But here's what people don't talk about, that kind of conviction, it doesn't last, because once the noise settles, once the messages stop, the stories stop, the chase ends, there's only silence. And in that silence, something strange begins to happen. The narrative she built so carefully starts to wobble. The story she told herself that you weren't enough, that she needed more, suddenly doesn't feel so certain anymore. And that's where the shift begins, quietly, slowly, but powerfully. It doesn't happen in one big moment. It creeps in during stillness. Maybe she's scrolling through old photos and pauses a little longer on one. Maybe she hears a song that played when you were together and it stirs something in her chest she thought was gone. Maybe she's with someone new, laughing, smiling, but somehow it feels forced, lighter, flatter, less real. And in those moments, something clicks. She starts remembering not just what you did wrong, but everything you did right. Your consistency, the way you noticed little things, the way your presence felt like safety, not chaos. It's in that contrast where the shift deepens, because the world is full of attention, but empty of depth. And the kind of connection you gave her, that's not easily replaced. She didn't expect to miss that part. She thought new attention, new excitement, new people would fill the space, but they don't, because you didn't just give her company, you gave her emotional security. And emotional security isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's not full of fireworks, it's calm, it's rooted, it's steady. And now that it's gone, she can feel the difference. That's when her thoughts start to flip. The ego that once protected her now begins to weaken. The pride that once told her you did the right thing now whispers, what if you didn't? She starts revisiting the past, but not in anger this time. She remembers the late night talks, the way you listened without judgment, the quiet support, the presence that didn't demand attention but always made her feel seen. You see, people forget how powerful emotional presence is until it's missing. And what she finds now doesn't compare. Yes, the compliments come. Yes, the attention flows. But it doesn't carry weight. It doesn't touch the places you reached. And that emptiness, it's not just loneliness, it's realization. Realization that maybe she left something she didn't fully understand. That maybe she misunderstood your silence not as strength, but as indifference. That maybe she let go too fast. And that's the moment where her internal world starts to turn, where confidence starts looking like a mask, where her smiles online become a performance, where her posts are no longer freedom, they're noise trying to distract from truth. She might not say it, she might never admit it, but deep down, she starts wondering, what if I was wrong? What if he was exactly what I needed, but I couldn't see it? That's what silence does. It doesn't just give her space, it gives her clarity. And in that clarity, she realizes you weren't just someone she dated, you were someone who understood her, who held space for her emotions, who never made her beg to be understood. That kind of connection can't be replicated by flings or rebound attention, because what you gave her was depth, and now all she sees around her is surface. And so her mind shifts, her emotions soften. The certainty she once had is now shadowed by doubt, and the longer the silence lasts, the louder her thoughts become. Because it's not just that she misses you, it's that she misses who she was when she was with you, how safe she felt, how real it was, how none of this new attention feels the same. And the scariest part for her, realizing you might not be waiting anymore, because while she was figuring things out, you were healing. While she was testing your silence, you were reclaiming your peace. And now that shift in her thoughts, it's not just nostalgia, it's regret. Regret for not seeing your value when she had it. Regret for mistaking your calm for weakness. Regret for walking away from something real in search of something louder. But real love isn't loud, it's deep. And now she knows the difference. That's when everything changes for her. Not because you chased, not because you begged, but because you didn't. And in that stillness, her truth finally caught up to her. When silence starts to echo at first, she thought your silence was just a phase, a strategy, a temporary reaction to her leaving. She thought you'd come back, maybe not with a big gesture, but something, anything to remind her that she still mattered, that she still had a hold on you. But day after day passed and you said nothing. No text, no call, not even a passive post on social media. And that's when the silence stopped being empty and started echoing, because silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a mirror. It reflects everything we don't want to face. At first, she mistook your silence for weakness. She told herself, he's just trying to make a point. She believed you were playing a game. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Because your silence wasn't bitter, it was clean. It wasn't petty, it was peaceful. And that's what started to bother her. Because silence like that doesn't come from someone who's trying to win. It comes from someone who's already healed enough not to fight, not to chase, not to prove anything. And when she saw that, the silence became louder than any words you could have said. She started checking her phone more often, looking for your name in places it used to show up, her stories, her likes, her feed. But it wasn't there. And what once felt like control started to feel like loss, because in her mind, you were supposed to react. You were supposed to care loudly enough for her to feel validated in leaving. But you didn't, and now she doesn't know what to do with the quiet, because silence like yours, it doesn't give her anything to push against. No arguments, no tears, no drama, just stillness. And that stillness forces her to sit with herself. No distractions, no validation, just her and the decision she made. And the question that keeps growing louder, did I let go of something real? That thought doesn't scream. It whispers softly, relentlessly, until it becomes impossible to ignore. And in that quiet, she begins to revisit everything. The way you looked at her when she was speaking, the way you stayed calm during her storms, the way you held space for her, even when she was pushing you away. Those moments start to replay in her mind. Not the fights, not the flaws, but the presence, the patience, the peace. And she realizes the silence isn't coming from someone trying to hurt her. It's coming from someone who finally chose himself. And that's what echoes the loudest, because it means you're not bitter, you're not angry, you're not clinging, you've simply let go, not out of pride, out of self-respect. And now she's the one left wondering, was he really that strong? Was he really that done? Did I matter less than I thought? But those questions aren't really about you. They're about her, her story, her image, her ego, because she wanted to be the one with the upper hand. She wanted to walk away and feel powerful. But power isn't walking away. It's being at peace with what you walked away from. And now she's not at peace, because what she expected, your reaction, your fight, your weakness, never came. Only silence. A silence so steady, so sincere, it made her question everything. And here's the truth. It's not the heartbreak that haunts people. It's the realization that someone they thought would always be there isn't anymore. That's what silence does. It doesn't just speak, it confronts. And by the time she realizes what your silence really means, it's already too late, because the man she expected to come crawling back, he's not coming at all. Her ego was, her emotions on the outside, she seems fine, unbothered, smiling in every post, living her life like she never skipped a beat. But look a little closer and you'll see it, the cracks, the contradictions, the small moments where ego and emotion collide and she doesn't know which one to follow. You see, when she walked away, she walked with her ego leading the way. She told herself it was strength. That leaving you meant choosing herself, that you didn't deserve her effort anymore. And maybe in that moment she believed it. But emotions, they don't vanish with logic. They don't disappear just because the mind builds a story. And now the story is starting to fall apart because her ego wants control, but her heart, it wants truth. The ego says, it didn't deserve me. The heart whispers, but I miss him. The ego posts, I'm thriving. The heart lingers on your profile at 2 a.m. The ego blocks. The heart wonders if you notice that inner conflict. It doesn't show up loudly. It shows up in the inconsistencies. One day, she's preaching about peace and power. The next, she's posting cryptic quotes that sound like regret. She might reach out in subtle ways, a random like, a vague message, a memory dropped in a conversation. But none of it is clear, because clarity would mean confronting what she's really feeling. And she's not ready for that, not fully. Because what happens when ego loses? Pride takes a hit. And that hurts more than the breakup itself. So she stays in the middle, not moving forward, not coming back, just stuck in the war between how she wants to appear and how she really feels. Her emotions miss the comfort, the connection, the calm, but her ego says reaching out makes her weak. So instead of healing, she performs, she dresses it up, pretends she's already over it, tells herself there's better out there. But every time she compares someone new to you, she doesn't feel excitement, she feels emptiness. Because deep down she knows the attention she's getting now doesn't touch what you gave her. They see her, but they don't get her. They listen, but they don't hear her. They show up, but not the way you did. And every time that realization hits, her emotions gain ground and her ego scrambles to rebuild the wall. That's why she's impulsive. That's why she behaves out of character, because she's not balanced. She's in a quiet storm. But here's what changes everything. You're not reacting. You're not feeding the ego. You're not giving her the validation that helps her suppress the truth. You're silent, and your silence forces the battle to intensify because now the ego has no audience and the emotions have no escape. Eventually, something breaks. Either pride wins and she hardens permanently, or emotion rises and she faces what she's been running from. Either way, your silence made one thing clear: you're not playing her game. You're not her lesson to unlearn. You were her peace, and she let it go. Now her ego is loud, but her emotions are louder. And that war, it's only just begun. Your power in not reacting, there's power in staying quiet. Not the kind of silence that comes from weakness or fear, but the kind that comes from strength, from knowing your worth, from choosing peace over performance. When she walked away, she expected a reaction, tears, texts, a late night message, anything that would prove to her that she still had control over your emotions. But when none of that came, she didn't feel strong, she felt confused. Because the narrative in her head didn't match your reality. You weren't falling apart. You weren't begging. You weren't chasing something that walked away like it never mattered. And that's where your power began to speak. You see, most people think silence is passive, but in moments like this, it becomes your loudest message. It says, I don't need to explain myself to someone who didn't see my value. It says, I refuse to prove my worth to someone who walked away from it. Oh, and more importantly, it says, I respect myself more than I desire your validation. That kind of strength, it doesn't look flashy, it doesn't scream, it doesn't post cryptic quotes or half-hearted attempts to win the breakup. It simply lives, heals, elevates. While she's checking to see if you've watched her story, you're focused on your purpose. While she's wondering why you haven't texted, you're realigning your peace. While she's posting to get a reaction, you're growing in silence. And the deeper that silence gets, the more powerful it becomes, because it exposes the difference between the one who was performing and the one who was present. You never had to beg to be understood. You just had to walk away from where you weren't appreciated, not to hurt her, not to prove a point, but because that's what real men do. They don't stay where they're treated like they're replaceable. So don't doubt yourself. Your lack of reaction is not weakness. It's emotional discipline. It's self-respect. It's the awareness that love is not proven through begging. It's proven through presence. And if someone couldn't value yours when they had it, let them face the silence without it. That silence, that's your power now. In the end, it wasn't your words that shook her. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a final message or a desperate plea. It was your silence, not the cold kind, not silence meant to punish or manipulate, but the silence of a man who finally chose peace over chaos, self-respect over pride games, healing over chasing. She expected noise. She expected you to lose control, to break down, to show her she still mattered by how much pain you were in. But when you didn't, it made her question everything. Because silence doesn't leave her with answers. It leaves her with herself. It leaves her wondering, did I really matter to him? Why hasn't he said anything? Was I wrong to think he'd never let go? And that quiet, it grows heavier with time. It starts to echo in moments she didn't expect. When her phone lights up and it's not your name. When she laughs with someone new but feels nothing deeper than surface level noise. When she posts a story and notices you're no longer watching because what she thought was strength leaving only had power as long as you reacted, but you didn't. And that flipped the whole script. Now, you're not the man who was left behind. You're the man who walked forward without bitterness, without chaos, without turning your pain into a performance. And that makes you unforgettable. Because in a world full of noise, the man who doesn't speak speaks the loudest. You didn't need to announce your growth. You didn't need to prove your value. You just lived it in silence, in strength. That's what haunts her now, not your absence, but the way you didn't fight to stay where you weren't honored. You became the version of yourself she never expected, unbothered, focused, stronger, and maybe one day she'll reach out. Maybe one day she'll admit the truth to herself. But by then it won't matter, because you stayed silent long enough to heal, long enough to outgrow the need for closure, long enough to realize that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your evolution. So stay silent, stay grounded, stay strong, because your strength was never in what you said. It was always in what you walked away from, and never looked back.